This special of the Vigilante Day Parade, which has run for over a century, features carefully selected archival footage that offers a nuanced perspective on its history. Some past costumes and floats may now be viewed as culturally insensitive. We acknowledge this and aim to include them only when contextually appropriate.
Welcome to MTN Outdoors.
There is nothing quite like the Vigilante Day Parade.
It's massive.
It's kind of a one-of-a-kind type of parade.
I don't know that there's anything like it in the nation.
Vigilante Day Parade is just a huge tradition.
But it's also a celebration of the great kids in this community and connecting to our history, and let's hope that we continue to do this for the next 100 years.
This year marks the 100th anniversary of the Vigilante Day Parade. The Montana Heritage and History Parade put on by high school students is one of the oldest parades in the United States. To better understand the impacts of the parade, we have to first start with the history of Helena. The Queen City of the Rockies is rich with history. Archaeological evidence indicates various indigenous peoples lived in the Helena area for more than 10,000 years. European settlers came to the area in 1864, where a group of miners known as the Four Georgians discovered gold at their Last Chance Gulch. The gold brought wealth and problems of its own. Road agent robberies were common in the burgeoning Montana territory. In response, many communities, including Helena, turned to vigilante justice. 14 alleged criminals were executed by Helena vigilantes between 1865 and 1870. In the early days of the state, Copper Kings ruled through influence and money, with controversial historical figure William A. Clark successfully lobbying to have Helena become the capital of Montana in 1875. By 1888, the town was home to the most millionaires per capita of any city in the world for the time. Around the turn of the 20th century, the students of Helena High had a tradition: the junior-senior fight.
Was a very violent and property damage, and so students would actively tussle with each other to get their flag higher than the other class to show who was the better class.
The school removed the flagpole on the ground level, so the students then turned to the pole on the roof. Then Helena High principal A.J. Roberts wrote about the brawl. The fight here became much more bitter and much more dangerous. It almost took away one's breath to see a half-dozen boys creeping unsteadily along the coping of the roof, or clinging to the highest point of those slender spires, liable to fall to death at any moment.
And so in response to that, administrators and parents were looking for alternatives.
Those alternatives included Sneak Day or Old Clothes Day, but nothing really stuck until 1924, when a parade reflecting Helena's history was proposed.
That was the successful attempt to move beyond the violent and dangerous senior-junior fight.
Much like the historic vigilantes of Montana, the Vigilante Day Parade was created to put an end to lawless activity. Early floats reflected the pioneer spirit, the heritage of the area, and vigilantes themselves. The parade quickly became a big success, with crowds packing downtown to witness the costumes and floats. In the following years, it would become a defining community event. Even world leaders would be counted in attendance. In 1939, Crown Prince Olaf of Norway and his wife Martha attended the parade as part of their tour of the United States, working to strengthen relations between the two countries. In 1950, President Harry S. Truman judged some of the floats.
10 floats were selected to be reviewed by himself and his party, so that was pretty incredible.
The parade has not been without controversy, specifically regarding some depictions of Native Americans and other minorities over the years. The school district now has a more strict scrutiny of floats to ensure that they are respectful and honor the impacts on Montana history those historic figures made. The parade has only been put on hold twice. The first time during World War II, when an effort was being made to conserve resources nationwide, and at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. An unofficial vigilante cruise was put on in 2020, where students drove floats through downtown without the crowds, and the event was streamed online. A reverse cruise was held in 2021, where people in cars drove past parked floats at the fairgrounds. In 2022, to much fanfare, it returned to its historic route down Last Chance Gulch. And now, in 2024, the parade celebrates 100 years, becoming part of the very history of the community that it has always tried to honor.
It's just incredible because it connects all sorts of people from different backgrounds and from different parts of Helena.
History's echoes are ever present in downtown Helena. The Vigilante Day Parade brings back the specters of the past down Last Chance Gulch and stirs the memories of those who participated.
It's massive. It literally takes over our entire downtown for at least 3 or 4 hours.
Helena High graduate Brianne Harrington owns the Painted Pot on Last Chance Gulch and is a board member of the Business Improvement District.
We actually opened originally in downtown Helena on Vigilante Day.
Like many people who grew up in Helena, she participated in the parade back in school.
My best friend in high school, her grandfather opened Haps Bar, so we recreated Haps Bar. And we were a bunch of slackers, so our float did not win any awards and was very haphazardly put together.
A common memory of past participants? Spending good times with friends. As Montana's Senate Majority Leader Steve Fitzpatrick recalls.
Well, I think it was fun. I mean, you got to get out of school for, I think, 2 days, get together with your friends, put together a float.
Fitzpatrick's family is from the Anaconda area, which inspired one of the floats he worked on.
Our 1997 float was called Anaconda Old Works Now and Then. As I think back of it, I think, you know, we spent some time that day, you know, working on the float, and then we'd play a little basketball, and then we'd work on the float again. I think actually my brother kind of bore the brunt of the work that day because he ended up building most of the float.
Those who have participated in the parade over the past century all have similar stories of fond memories spent with friends like Helena Taproom owner and 24th Governor of Montana, Steve Bullock.
I think back to 40 years ago when I graduated, and it was such a magical time. I mean, we took writing reports seriously. You'd have the smart people writing the reports. You'd have the folks that knew how to do construction working, take 2 full days off, build incredible floats, and just, it was a celebration for us of community, but also tied into the history of our state.
A number of Montana's elected leaders participated in the parade, like current Secretary of State Christy Jacobson.
Vigilante Day Parade is just a huge tradition. So when I was a freshman at Capitol High School, I rode my horse in the parade, and I have a picture here with me and my best friend Darcy riding in the parade. And then when I was a sophomore and a junior in high school, I was a cadet, so I marched and performed in the parade with the marching band. And then my senior year, I actually built a float and participated that way.
For both Jacobson and Bullock, it was special to see their kids participate in the same tradition when they reached high school.
Yeah, just a great tradition. I was in the parade, and then to have our kids be in the parade and watch when they were growing up, it's a special day.
It was so fun listening to them get ready to do the float and actually seeing them coming down Last Chance Gulch, thinking that those were the same steps, many of the same experiences that I had years before.
The parade, by its nature, connects generations. Such was the case with MTN anchor Tim McGonigal.
I had a friend who, her dad had an old fire truck, and our float that year was the 1932 Helena High football championship team, which to this day is still the last time Helena High won a championship. It was a fun float because, I mean, the fire truck made the whole thing, and then we found some old clothes, and there were always a lot of good floats. There was always some float that someone really went like full bore on, and it was like, okay, that one's gonna win.
Montana Legislature Representative Gary Perry was one of those students who aimed high when participating.
We went down to Bozeman and actually got the plans of the stagecoaches that were used on the Bozeman Trail. It was fun. I mean, you spent the week doing it, you had a great time with your friends, and you had an opportunity to look into doing things that were part of the history of Montana.
It's important because to remember the past it helps us in the present. I think it's important because the businesses that started in Helena and just the way of life of Montanans is really depicted you know, all the way through the 100 years of the Vigilante Parade. There's one float that I really liked, and I think it was in the 80s. It was a hang 10, and on one side of the float there were girls with waves that were surfing, and they were actually in their bikinis. And then on the other side was the Henry Plummer, the hanging tree. And so I thought that was pretty funny.
To this scale, we don't have a tradition that's really, I mean, beyond certain cultural traditions. This tradition has lasted quite a long time, I mean, and it still holds true, I mean, to this day. In 2013, I worked on a float that depicted the statues of Helena. So that was my high moment in high school, was getting to work on that float, so it was pretty exciting.
Helena High Class of 59 graduate Carleen Haynes says some of her fondest memories from high school were working on the parade with friends.
Oh, it's just really lots of fun. All the kids would get together, and a lot of times we would go out to the kids that lived on a farm or something, so we'd have a bigger place to work on the floats. But a couple times we just worked on our driveway on 5th Avenue, and just everybody came together and just had a good time, and it was just a lot of fun.
I believe this is a very unique event because I'm from out of state, South Dakota, and when you come here, you are so surprised. It's a really unique Helena cultural experience that goes way back with the 3777s, and that used to be a club at Helena High, and I don't know that there's anything like it in the nation.
I graduated from Helena High in 2006 and also have those same fond memories of building floats with friends and goofing off once we got done. I didn't get to ride on the floats though, as I marched all 4 years in Mr. Loveridge's band. Coming up after the break, we see all of the preparation work that goes into putting on the Vigilante Day Parade. Over the last 100 years, there have been countless floats who have made their way down Last Chance Gulch for the Vigilante Day Parade. Although the final designs vary, there have been a fair number of repeat themes over the years, as Helena High School Principal Steve Tennis can attest.
At the high school, I've been here 32 years, so 32 years worth of flower fights and log cabins. And then I also, as a student way back in the day from Capitol High School, participated all 4 years in the Vigilante Parade.
Before participating, students have to submit an essay about their float, and every entry is approved by the school administration before being given the green light. In the cases of floats depicting Native Americans, students work with an Indian Education for All advisor, and then the float will need final approval from the superintendent.
We have the categories, we have things, and anything outside of the category has to have special approval from us, or in some cases from the superintendent. So, but the kids are welcome to do their own research, and you know, that's what we're hoping is they look into the history of this historic place. So,
in an effort to breathe some fresh life into a century-old tradition, the journalism students of Helena High worked with the Montana Historical Society and conducted their own research to find new themes that hadn't been done.
There's so much rich history within these different areas of Helena history that without researching, we know nothing about, my generation knows nothing about. And so sort of helping to convey this information to the masses is incredibly important and special.
From the Marlowe Theater to L. Ron Hubbard, founder of Scientology and former Helena High student, the staff of the Nugget say they learned a ton about their hometown when writing these articles.
Like in Reader's Alley, I didn't know that it was originally Cutler Street, and that was something interesting to learn. Or just generally how the Chinese have influenced a lot of culture and architecture here in Helena and all over the state. So it's kind of interesting to start with how these groups spring up, and then how these buildings and places have endured throughout Montana history.
The legacy of Vigilante Day in Helena is much like the parade itself, with each student building upon what came before and adding to the grandeur of it all. Bringing history back to life doesn't happen overnight, and students have been hard at work for the last few weeks to get ready for the big day. With one day until the Vigilante Day Parade, teens across Helena were hard at work getting ready. with supervision, of course.
We're building our float, which is the first play that Grant Street ever put on. We're painting stages and putting together plywood and layering it on top of each other. And then we have an archway where we're gonna attach lights and make it look like the Grant Street stage.
Because it's the 100-year anniversary, this is the drama club's float. We came together on board and we're like, hey, what do we do? And I'm like, hey, it's our 100th year. We're a theater organization. Let's do a theater float.
Students working on floats aren't the only ones polishing any rough edges before the parade. For weeks, the Capitol High and Helena High band and dance teams have been getting ready for the parade. Students recognize the legacy they are participating in.
When we march, we're marching in the same footsteps that 100 years ago they were marching, and that the trombones are still sitting in the front where they, were when we originally marched. So there's a tremendous amount of history, and I mean, you're literally playing the music that was played back then.
I'm an exchange student from Norway, so I just got here this year, and I think that's pretty cool that it just happens to be the 100th year anniversary. It's just wild that it has been going on for so long.
Just like the generations that came before, part of the appeal for students to participate is spending time with their friends while also honoring the area's history.
Really one of my favorite parts of the year. It's so fun to be with all these friends and to really come together to create something. And I know it's the same way for like all the high schoolers in Helena, and it's very special.
While the Vigilante Day Parade showcases the students' work, it also connects them to a legacy that stretches a century back. Coming up after the break, it's time for the running of the Vigilante Day Parade on its 100th anniversary. As I said earlier, there is nothing quite like the Vigilante Day Parade. But don't take my word for it. Listen to those who are in attendance. Crowds flooded downtown Helena on the 100th anniversary of the Vigilante Day Parade, cheering on the students of Helena High and Capitol High.
It's pretty exciting, it really is. I got here at 10 o'clock to save our spot and cheer for my kiddos. My job was to read the essays, and it's really fun. I think they learn, and I know I do, being only here 5 years, I've learned so much just from this event.
It's a great experience. It's really fun to see everyone come out and enjoy the downtown. We love watching all of the floats go by, and it's really fun to share it with my children as well now.
We are very excited. I had a Vigilante Day float when I was in high school, all 4 years, and so we really loved that this is a Helena tradition, and glad it's still going strong.
It was cool, I was born and raised in Helena, and so to see just the change and everything that is involved with this is kind of crazy, you know what I mean? So it's kind of an honor, really,
Yes, it's so much fun to watch, especially working at the school and seeing the kids come together and build their floats. It's awesome. I love it.
Onlookers were treated to floats themed around Eddie's Bakery, the Man Gulch Fire, Camp Rimini, and even the junior-senior fight, which led to the creation of the Vigilante Day Parade. The Grand Marshals of the parade this year are the family of A.J. Roberts, former mayor of Helena and Helena High principal, who started the now century-old tradition in an effort to put an end to the brutal fighting between students. Family members I spoke with said they would hear stories of the fisherman and dedicated educator.
He passed away before my parents were married. So we learned about him through my father and my grandmother. And the biggest thing I remember, one is education was extremely important to him. And he was involved in the community in every way he could be.
He always seemed like a man of integrity and honesty and good morals, lived for the betterment of others and helping people.
Robert's descendants say they feel a sense of pride knowing their family member had such an impact on the Helena community.
It's awesome, okay? It's awesome. You only hear and read about these kind of guys.
Ultimately, we all stand on the shoulders of giants and push forward on the path those who came before trailblazed. One day, our own actions will become history, with future generations looking back on our work. Only time will tell the impact our lives will have. In A.J. Roberts' own words, the parade, so little thought of at the time, and then only as a splendid substitute for several lawless activities, has more than any other institution distinguished the city of Helena and its high school. From it, also thousands of citizens have obtained a knowledge of the life and customs of the thrilling story of the early days in the Treasure State.
To this scale, we don't have a tradition that's really, beyond certain cultural traditions. This tradition has lasted quite a long time, and it still holds true, to this day.
You know, the last 14 years we've been downtown, there have been some very impressive floats that go by. I am blown away by the amount of work, the artistic nature of the floats. I've really enjoyed recently seeing new floats because we do get a lot of repeats.
There's always a couple log cabins, there's always a couple guys off the football teams with a couple boxing matches. There's always a few people panning for gold. But you know, the creativity that goes into it is always amazing. You'll see some really good floats that go through, and the kids take a lot of time to put those together. So I think that's what's neat as well. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it.
I like to think of it as like, they're not completely serious and like stone-faced in the pictures. They're like us, they're laughing and they're telling jokes and playfully bullying each other as friends do.
One of the great things about that was everybody had the chance to become a historian. You know, they might not have been that excited about history class, but when it came to actually putting together that report for Vigilante Day, the brainstorming among our friends of what should we do this year, you really would get a lot of sort of the Helena and the Montana history. And I hope it's still the same. Like, you know, we were talking like, we would take 2 full days off, and that was even before Vigilante Day. And we had a heck of a lot of fun, but we also took it seriously.
I feel like it's just like this moment where it doesn't last a super long time, but it feels like you're really connecting with the community. And just like when you're driving down the street and you just see all the little kids and they have the biggest smiles on their faces, and you just know that you put all this work into your float. And it feels kind of like a moment of awe because you know, like, you worked really hard towards it, and now it's finally that moment.
COVID could have easily killed this, and yet we're still here, we're still doing it, and we've reached 100, and that's like the milestone. I don't know any other parades in Montana that have reached 100 years. This is the parade.